This little amp has to be the most bang for your buck piece of guitar gear that you could possibly find. It certainly has been for me. About 6 months ago, I decided I wanted to get one of these because I've been watching some videos that Barry Cadogan did with Gibson. And I love the sound on those videos. And actually, to begin with, I didn't even clock what amp he was using. And then I decided to look in the background, and there was this little Epiphone amp. Now, I saw this about 1.5 years ago. And I thought, I don't know what this Epiphone amp is. I didn't even Google it though. I just thought maybe it was a one-off, or I wasn't sort of in the guitar scene when these amps came out, so I had no idea. One day I decided just to Google Epiphone amps. I thought, well, maybe it's something they make at the moment, but they don't, sadly. But it is just one of the coolest looking things I've ever seen. And when I finally found a second-hand one, I couldn't believe the price. I mean, I think I got this delivered with the cabinet for 150 quid, which you can't really complain about that. Now, this thing does what it says on the tin. It's a guitar amplifier. It just amplifies your guitar. It doesn't do anything else, right? It's got the most sparse front control panel you've ever seen. It's just one volume knob. Everything else you do on the guitar or with pedals. Now, there is an issue with it, and that's if you play it through the cabinet, it's going to sound like this. Yeah, this little closed back cabinet with the head on top, it looks really cool, but it doesn't sound so good. Now, you could definitely get an effect sound out of this, a sort of old-fashioned pushed small amp sound, which is great, but for general use, this little 8-inch speaker in here is not really doing the business. So everything else you're hearing in this video is actually this amp plugged into my 2x12 Marshall cab with some vintage greenbacks in, which I'd say makes for a much better sound. This thing is so much fun. I just really want to sort of take you guys through a few guitars, a little bit of clean, a little bit of overdrive. It's basically, you set this amp in one of 3 places. So we'll either pull back the volume and set it clean. Let's go for 9 o'clock. Okay, and then I'd go up to just before halfway for the beginning of some sort of dirty tone. And if we want to go mad, I would push it up to about 3 o'clock and wind back the guitar and see what sort of sounds come out. So out of those sounds, I probably enjoyed the middle one the most. I thought at some points it just sounded absolutely great, perfect for a blues solo, perfect for recording some blues with a Strat. And actually, overall, the Strat probably allows the amp to have the most sort of breathing room. You know, it's not hitting the front of it too hard, so you don't have to worry as much. With the other guitars, you have to play pretty sort of gently if you want to get any sort of dynamics out of them, which, you know, in a way, it's a great way to practice as well. You know, to have a lamp like this that has absolutely no bells and whistles and is not as touch responsive and dynamic as some of the more, you know, expensive boutique amps that I might normally play with or whatever. Yeah, it's a great sort of limitation to have. I mean, look, I'm not trying to say that this amp, it would, you know, probably take the place of some of the other amps I've got here, but there is some sort of cool mojo I like about it. It's similar to the way a Fender Champ makes you feel and play or record. You know there's limitations, so you work within them, and that sort of stretches you a little bit to sort of figure out ways to play that are not your normal way. On top of that, I think when you crank these things, you can sort of get, you know, really cool old sounds. I was listening to a record recently by the Cinelli brothers, who I'll put the link down in the description. And I could see when I then watched the performance they did of it, that they were using a little champ, but it sounded like they were as well. You know, it's that really broken, almost like brass instrument sound that you get, which is really cool with these little things. Okay, so I thought what could be really fun next would be to see basically how loud is this thing when it's clean. So if I set the volume to about 9 o'clock on here, and then, because I can't imagine that's loud enough for every situation, what happens if you then use a Fryette power station to increase the volume as much as possible? The Fryette is a really clever piece of gear, and it's got its own tube in there, and that gives it really high fidelity sort of attenuation, but it also allows it to sort of reamp or have its own power section to increase the volume of a quiet amp or a small amp, but I've never actually done it before. So let's try it by itself and plug it into that and then see what happens. Okay, haven't got the Fryette plugged in yet, so let's just try. Okay, I've got the Fryette on now. I don't think it's doing anything yet in terms of increasing the volume. Okay, we can first, let's put the bright switch on that Fryette. increase the presence. Now let's put the volume, it was on 12, we'll go up to 2 o'clock. Okay, we'll put it up to 3. Pretty loud. Let's go even a step further. Yeah, and full. Yeah, I'm sort of quite surprised at how loud that could get and stay completely clean. I mean, if anything, it says more about the Fryette than it does about the amp, but that's really impressive, and I think that means you can use this amp basically for anything if you like, given how cool it looks and the fact that that clean sound was fine. You know, I imagine there's a lot to do with speakers chosen, even compared to just the amp itself. I mean, it's a very direct sound, this amp. The little reverb pedal I've been using, the Topanga by Cattle and Bread, has really helped to give it a bit more life. But it doesn't sound bad at all. You know, it may not be the most sort of life-changing sounding thing in the world, but it's a lot of fun for 150 quid. Yeah, really, really awesome. Okay, the thing I want to do is put a couple of pedals together, maybe a FUZZ pedal and a Univibe or something, and just see what we can get out of it. That'll be fun. This video was really all about like the last video before Christmas and just doing something a little bit out of the ordinary. So yeah, let's see what happens with that. I mean, look, you're not going to get all the lows and everything that you get on a much bigger amp, right? There's only so much this thing can do. You can't sculpt the tone at all. But I've got to say that is not bad at all. Like this amp, the sound lives in a place where I feel like you could hear it through most things. You know, it's quite direct, it's quite cutting, it's quite nice to play, which just boggles my mind because I played much more expensive amps that maybe they just don't suit me, but that I just don't get on with. And this one, there's something about these Class A little amps that maybe it's a mix of you don't expect too much, you know there's only a couple of sounds in there, so you go with it. But honestly, that was pretty cool. Okay, before we do the last guitar, which is going to be an SG, I just thought it'd be fun to talk about my plans with this amp. So what's cool about these Epiphone Valve Juniors, and people have been doing this since they came out, is modding them. You can do all sorts with this. Some people own several of these and then do different things with them, but you can turn them into proper point-to-point, you know, wired, proper boutique style amps. You know, in there will be a little PCB. There are people that sell already hand-wired like turret boards that you can put in with like good stuff on them. Or I could make my own. You know, I've made some amps before. I probably would start by buying something for this. It's not very expensive, what I've seen, and going from there and seeing what difference it will make to have the same circuit, but rather than like on a PCB, to have it, you know, like a boutique style thing. So I think I'm going to look out for one of those and then do an update video on this and see what the main differences are. And then after that step, we can look further. Now, if I see another one come up for similar prices to what I paid, I'm going to go for it, because then I can mod 2 of them in different ways. I'm pretty sure there'll be people who figured out how to put tone controls and stuff on, and that would be pretty fun to see what happens with that. But you know what, this amp is going nowhere. Out of all my collection, it'll be the safest thing here, because for 150 quid, there's just no way I would let go of this. It's something that I wouldn't use very often, but when I have an idea for something, you know, that needs a particularly brash or unique sound that I can't get out of anything else, this would be the go-to thing. Yeah, love it. And it sits in the side of my room. It's often in the back of the shop, and I just think they did a great job. It's a shame they don't make these anymore. It'd be cool if they brought them back. So for the last thing, what I'm going to do is just whack the volume all the way up and use the guitar's volume to control it. And I think that's a good way to go with this sort of amp. It's being that there's not much in there, there's a very direct control between your guitar and the amp, and it works really well. So this SG is out of phase in the middle position. When you hear that slightly quacky tone, that's what that is. But look, I'm not going to come back after this clip. I'm going to tell you what I think now. I'm quite amazed, really. Proper old British bluesy sound coming out of it, and I'm sure, you know, I could probably do better given more time. But yeah, you know, I would, if I was recording a track that I wanted that sort of late 60s British blues sound, I would try recording this amongst other amps and seeing what happened. I can imagine for the woman tone and everything, you could get some great sounds out of this. So yeah. Now, if you see one secondhand, try and get it before me. It's all I can say. Okay, look, it's the day before Christmas Eve. I wanted to do a fun thing as my last video before Christmas. I will be back hopefully between Christmas and New Year for one video. I've got one of my big, this one's going to be 13 amps and 1 guitar, where I play all the amps, like I've done a couple recently. That might be out before New Year's, and then on New Year's Day, I've got a video of a new amp to me that will be coming out. So yeah, I hope you have a lovely Christmas and enjoy the video. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see what I do with this amp in future, or you want to see other stuff on my channel. And yeah, see you soon. Cheers.